I am happy with this and intend to take the business in the order set out before us. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor M. Foster, who's been substituted by Councillor S. Clough. We've also received apologies from Councillor L. Hartshorn, who's substituted by Councillor T. Lacey. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to item 2, declarations of interest. Members are requested to declare the existence and nature of any disposable pecuniary interest and/or other interests not already on their register of interests in any item on the agenda and withdraw from the meeting at the appropriate time. Do we have any interest to declare?
Yes, I just like it that I hold the portfolio for as a cabinet member, and therefore it is to a degree within my scope of interest. However, pecuniary interests, and have made no comment up to this point at any time. Thank you.
Are there any other interests to declare? No, just thank you. Thank you. Item 3, minutes of the last meeting. We now have the minutes of our meeting in February this year. Are we all happy that they are record? Thank you. Thank you. Just a show of hands. That's everybody. Yeah, thank you. The motion has been carried. We can now move on to the main business. Said to applications and the TPO, but before I start, I would like to explain for the benefit on YouTube how we deal with them.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is the procedure considering the business this afternoon. The Chair will introduce an application, then ask the planning officers to refer members to any late comments since the agenda was issued. These have been published on the Council's website and hard copies have been circulated to you. After this, the Chair will ask any speakers to address the meeting. They will each be given 3 minutes to put forward their views. There will be a reminder given by the clerk when 30 seconds remain. At the end of the 3 minutes, members will have an opportunity to ask the speaker questions in order to clarify any points that they have made. After the speaker has addressed the committee and answered any questions, then they will be allowed to remain in the meeting, but they will not be allowed to participate further from this point. The Chair will then open the meeting for questions to officers. A debate by the committee and on the application by a vote. The vote will be taken by roll call. Finally, members being live streamed, and a recording will be made, which will be placed on the Council's website. Please note that others may choose to copy this recording. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to the first application, which is NED/200574/FL at Holmesfield. Tell us about any links, but I'm sure you've all seen them on the table, and to give a brief presentation showing any photos and plans of the site. I will allow the officers to complete the presentation. Consequently, members, could you please reserve any points of order or questions until the end? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to go through a brief introduction, Chair, and then go through the slides that we've prepared for members. But firstly, just to ask members to note the late comments report, as you've said, was issued yesterday, and the late comments in respect of the Holmesfield application. The application, Chair, seeks consent to use a field located to the south of Holmesfield for dog exercise and training. It lies in the Greenbelt in an area of multiple environmental sensitivity. Facilitate its from the existing access, create a limited parking and turning area, and to erect 1.86 metres high, enclosing the field but set back in from the field margins. Members will need to assess if the proposal is acceptable development in this location and in this context and adequately protects the amenity of the nearest residential properties. Members should also note that the Highway Authority, Environmental Health Officers and the Derbyshire Wildlife Trust do not object in principle to the application. Sure, the committee will also note, Chair, that officers are recommending a temporary permission be granted for a limited 2-year period. And that's in line with the Environmental Health Officer advice that we've received, and it offers the chance for the use to begin, but a time period to test that it can operate in the proposed and in an acceptable way. This conclusion does impact on some elements of the scheme, Chair, should it be granted consent in this form, including the initial servicing of the car parking area and landscaping. They could be reassessed following the expiry of any temporary permission at the end of that 2-year period. Finally, Chair, in reviewing the proposed conditions, officers actually considered that conditions 7, 9 and 10, which require further details to be submitted, are not actually proportionate to the granting of a temporary permission, and in the case of the highway conditions are otherwise encapsulated within the terms and conditions which would otherwise be conditioned, whilst the ecological requirements could be adequately safeguarded and required at any time in the future if a permanent consent was granted. They are therefore not considered necessary by officers at this point. And just to go through the slides, Chair, further to the site visit that we undertook yesterday virtually. And the first slide, Chair, just shows the site outlined in beige at the centre of the slide. As you can see, at the northern point, the northwestern point, is the access to Millthorpe Lane, which is the access onto the highway network. And then, as you can see, the site extends from there in the southerly direction and generally downhill. Thanks, Alice. The second slide, Chair, is the site outlined in red. And if we can just go on to the next slide, this shows the area where the fencing would be erected, as I say, set in from the field margin to a height that would keep out deer and other species that might otherwise get in and go into the field. And then it's connected to the car parking area at the top end of the field. You can see the nearest properties that are referred to in the report, Chair, to the north, comprising Holmesfield Village. And then there is another property, again referred to in the report, just off to the southwest, that's the nearest property to the southwest beyond the field adjoining the site. Thanks, Alice. And these two slides, Chair, put together show on the right-hand side the new access, the position of the gate set back from the access point and the car parking and turning area, along with the initially limited landscaping that's proposed. And then the slide on the left shows the gapping that's referred to in the committee report in additional trees that would be planted. Again, we'll see a snippet of those in the photographs, but we did see how that would work yesterday. And there's just some photographs, Chair, just to remind members of what we saw yesterday. This is the existing access point with the gate, and the area to the left of the gate would be in the long term if consent were granted, and then a permanent permission granted would be wildflower meadow and planting area. The area in the foreground beyond the gate is where the parking and turning areas would be formed. Thanks, Alice. This is the view from the access point to the north towards Holmesfield, and then the next slide should ideally be south along Millthorpe Lane to the south. Thanks, Alice. I think this is looking back towards the site access, which is just where the little van on the left-hand side of the photograph is. It's just at that point there. And then this shows the nearest residential property and the outbuilding that's referred to in some detail in the report, Chair. Otherwise, the site in the foreground is a field. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to our speakers, and we'll take them in this order, with the ward member, Councillor Bentley Stafford Stevenson, to speak first. If you'd like to take the seat. Three minutes when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee members and colleagues. I called in this application on the basis of the strength of feeling amongst the local community. Never in my time as a local councillor or a resident of Holmesfield have I seen such a controversial application in which so many residents are in opposition. As you'll have seen in the pack, there are 73 objections and 77 letters of support, Of the 77 letters, all bar 2 are from outside the local area, such as Claycross, and even from outside of North East Derbyshire, as far away as Rotherham. I do not believe that people will travel that distance to use a dog walking facility, and a quick Google search brings up several walking areas already in existence, much closer to those residences. Websites such as dogwalkingfields.com provides a map of local facilities, and there are existing sites listed in Matlock, Silkston, Barnsley, and 2 in Chesterfield alone. It's also worth pointing out that there's already a dog training facility on the border of Barlow and Drogfield Hilltop, making another similar facility in the area inappropriate as just village. There's no economic, social, or aesthetic benefit to local residents. And whilst the ambition to start a new business is own and local employers live within my ward, the overall location is not welcome or appropriate. And I'm sure there are better sites elsewhere not within Greenbelt. And there are many reasons for objections stated within the pack, and I don't think there will be demand from local residents for the facility. And I fail to see how it will bring in further revenue to the local economy, as people will be driving in, parking up, and driving out. The council to promote tourism and leisure, but this development will have the opposite effect. In section 6.4 within the pack, outlining the 5 purposes of Greenbelt, albeit development is not currently within the scope of the application, the objective to preserve the setting and special of historic towns would be detrimental to the special crown within North East Derbyshire and attracts people from the wider area for its bucolic and tranquil landscape, horse riding. And the reason why many residents choose to I do not use that will come dogs and proceed to go onto a local pub or cafe, particularly if the dog has behavioural issues. And this is a farming community, and it's my intention for it to remain so. The overwhelming onus on the applicant, police noise, nuisance, pollution, access and security, when they will not be present. How can this be achieved is all concerted? Rural crime is a growing problem, and in countless instances of dogs often worrying or even killing livestock, despite assurance from the applicant for this to happen. Bringing dog behavioural issues into the heart of a livestock farming community is like bringing petrol to bonfire. The enclosure
30 seconds
is
remain.
described as wire-style deer fencing almost 2 metres high. I don't believe this contributes to high-quality design as per the SDC 12 planning policy. And does the will of the government want planning decisions to be in the hands of local communities? Yet this application from an applicant from outside of the area is completely at odds with this intention. I therefore commend the committee to reject the planning application on the grounds of inappropriate and respect the wishes and concerns of the actual local residents. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Are there any questions, Speaker? Councillor Hall?
Yeah, hiya. Yeah, good afternoon. I was just going to ask you, when they talk about dog exercise and training facility, may or may not be able to answer, but I just wanted to know when talking about a turning circle for cars and people coming from outside the area, so what the idea of it is for someone to get in the car, put the dog in the car, drive to this facility and then take it for a walk and then take it in. Puzzle is, or is there training to it, or is it's going to be overnight in kennels? Do you know a bit more about them, please?
The idea, well, from the application, what's been received is that anybody wanting to use the site would essentially have to book a slot, which is why there's a limited number of car parking spaces, and supposedly to avoid the number of commuters, the number of traffic on the road, the number of the development itself of the car park and so on. So it would be timed slots. But yes, the idea is that with the fencing, which is, almost the two, I'm sure officers, when you get to it, can provide a little bit more detail on the permissions and the scope of what.
Councillor Allen?
But after you start behaviour, have you got any history of this is not going to be and open the gate and it can go off into farmland and do as it feels, whether it wants to bite a sheep or not, which we don't allow? Have you got proof that there's that the dogs would be able to get out? Do you know of any bad behaved dogs?
Well,
there
are bad behaved dogs, and the whole point of this is for behavioural issues as well as dogs to remain free off the lead. It takes one instance for that to happen. I care for the farmers in my community. We have sheep on my farm alone, and sheep worrying is a major concern. You probably hear in the general news. So I can't guarantee that it will or won't happen. Who can guarantee that? Well, I can guarantee that if they do get out, there's a chance that it may happen. Then, the chance of what will happen with that, with farmers if coming across a dog that's running stray. So there's a likelihood of it. I can't guarantee it will or won't happen. But the point is, it's a dog training facility. And if there are dogs there with behavioural problems, you're increasing the likelihood. So it's just exacerbating the problem that exists right now, but could exist if it was to be granted.
I hear what you say, but now we've spoke about a dog training facility, and then we spoke about people getting in the car, driving to that spot, taking the dogs for a walk in the car, and obviously driving back home or wherever. So what is it? Is it a dog training facility, or is it somewhere you can take your pet?
My point is, you go there, your dog, you exercise them, let them run free, you remain with your dog, then you get in your car and drive off. My point was, I don't see any benefit to the local economy, because if the dog has behavioural issues, they're not going to take it into a local pub or cafe, are they? Or a pick your own pumpkin patch. It's going to be just driven there and used. But I fail to believe that someone from Rotherham can drive out an unknown village, probably to them, to use a training facility when there's more on their local doorstep. Not have the issue somewhere you
It's choice, isn't it? It's by choice. If somebody wants to come from Rotherham to visit this place, we can't say where they're coming from. You couldn't tell me where they were coming from, because all we'd see was a person in a car or two people in a car pet. You can't say, oh, that car's coming from Rotherham.
You prove my point by saying you can't, someone's coming to the facility disappearing. It doesn't matter where they're from, but all the letters of support are from outside the area, bar two, which indicates at this point, well, either it's a PR campaign to get encouragement support for friends of mine that may have decided they want to support the application, or they will be the actual users of the facility. Again, coming from outside of the village. Everyone I've spoken to about it in the village, and as you'll see from all the letters of objection, people won't use this. We're in the middle of the countryside. We have walks on our doorstep. Farmers have their own land. They're going to use that. They're not going to use that facility there. They're already exercising their dogs where they should need to. So yes, you can't police where they're coming from, but I think that's an irrelevant point almost. The application just shows that the strength of support is from outside the area.
Again,
Thank you.
That's all I'm asking for. What I've asked for. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
The simple question is about rent slot to use the field. Who will supervise the animals? If it's a training facility, I just assume, rightly or wrongly, that people will turn up with a dog. There'll be somebody there supervising some training of these animals. And with the kettle.
When the dog lion bringing the dogs that they've been so shut gates. How many times have you walked in the country that left gates wide open for farmers and livestock have run off? So this comes down to how do you police it? And yes, the applicant has said that they will, check in once a day, but it's already happened by then, hasn't it?
I have questions on the policing for the officers. The second question, if you don't mind, Chair, whose field is it? Is it a local owner's field, local farmer's field?
The applicant is the owner of the field, is my understanding, but they're not resident in the village.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Armitage.
Thank you, Chair. I've noticed that it's put in for deer fencing and rabbit fencing at the base. Is there any evidence that there are deer in the area and rabbits?
There are deer in the area. We have them on our own farm. I believe they've come from the Chatsworth estate and they've just wandered out into the moorland. So we get them across our land. Whether they've ventured that far into the village itself, can't say I've personally seen it, but there's a chance. And rabbits are everywhere. Yeah. So yes, to your point.
And are there footpaths where dogs could be exercised?
There are footpaths, walkways, bridle routes, and obviously quiet country lanes that you can walk on.
Right, thank you.
Are there any further questions for the speaker? No, thank you. If you'd like to take a seat.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker for the afternoon is Claire Brooks.
Yes, sorry, Chair, just to explain, we will be bringing in the speakers in groups simply because of the numbers involved. So Ashley's just gone to get them now. And I think there'll be a further 3 in this group. Thank you, Chair.
Good afternoon. And I've got our next speaker down was Claire Brooks. You'd like to just state your name and then you've 3 minutes when you're ready.
Sorry, could you use a microphone, please?
Sorry. My name is Claire Brooks. I'm the landowner of the field next door called Brookfield Stables. Excuse me, and the owner of the horse there. I have been a horse owner for 55 years, so there's not a lot you can tell me about horses' reactions to situations. I've been there, done it, got the T-shirt. I'm also a British Horse Society Access and Bridleways officer for 7 years as well. First thing I want to address is the boundaries of this field. I did notice in the conditional approval sheet or report that they were talking about must put up a secure boundary, rebuild the boundaries. That boundary between the applicant field and my field is virtually non-existent. I have planted in my field over 700 hawthorn whips so far. I have got another 300 to go in what I've actually got on hand. I will be planting probably another 500 on top of that. Now, if you drive up there, you will see a hedge going across the field. That hedge is 9 years old. Where I have planted whips to rebuild the boundary down the roadside, anywhere else, where they are close to the trees already in existence, those are still 9 years on, only 2 feet high, because the existing trees are taking the water and the nutrients out of the ground. They haven't died, but they're not thriving. So that boundary is going to take anything from 15 to 20 years of replanting to actually become a boundary that is going to contain animals of any description. It's just massive holes at the moment. So I wanted to make that point particularly clear. The other thing I want to talk about is animal welfare, because this is what this exercise area is all about, really. Animal welfare, training the dogs, those that have a problem, those that have that may be nervous. Or
30 seconds remain.
So if those dogs escape, there's no boundary fencing to stop them getting into my field and chasing my horses. Who is going to be responsible if my horses are critically or fatally injured? Because horses are prey animals. They will run. Dogs are hunters. They will chase and attack. I'm more concerned now than I was with the original application.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Councillor Hall?
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm over here. I just wanted to ask, when you say you have horses in your field, which is the field?
It's the oval shaped one running down the west side on the map.
So
that big oval one with the lines going across, that one.
That one just to the left. Thank you. Because also when you talk about footpaths and bridle ways, it says in our report that there's a public path right of way, P26, that runs to the east of the site. So that's the other side.
The footpath actually is from the top of Cartledge Lane and runs down 2 fields away, actually, from my field. So 1 field away from the applicant field. And it runs all the way down to halfway down Millthorpe Lane.
Right. So would you get like horses on that? You mean?
No, that's a footpath. Right. Not allowed. Horses are not allowed on footpaths.
Okay, I just wondered.
The bridle paths we are allowed on, and there's a bridle path from Cartledge Lane straight down into Barlow.
Okay, and for your field, you have 1 horse or several?
3.
Horses? 3 horses.
At the moment, there's 3. I've got stables for 4, but there's 3 at the moment.
Okay, with stable. Yep, thank you.
Any other questions? No, thank you. If you'd like to take your seat.
Thank you.
And
shall I leave this on?
You can do, yeah. And next speaker is Louisa Nicholson. No, okay, moving on. Just conferring here. And we've done Claire. He's gone. It appears our speakers list is out of kilter.
Is Robert Barnes here? I think he'd be the
you.
next one, Chair.
Thanks,
If you'd like to state your name, and then it's 3 minutes when you're ready.
It's Robert Barnes.
I am Robert Barnes. I am fortunate to have lived in this valley for 58 years. I worked on local farms from the age of 12 to 25 and helped on my parents' small plant nursery. So I was of the land. I am now a builder. As such, I understand and know that nothing remains the same and change does happen. However, not all change is for the good, and in fact, some is downright detrimental, not only in a subjective way, but more importantly, in an objective and factual way, namely damaging the environment and ultimately human health. Winston Churchill once said, "A healthy population is a nation's greatest asset." Back in his day, the countryside and the food it produced was not under the current threats as it is now. Consequently, I wish to endorse and to elaborate and state a healthy countryside is a population's greatest asset. By removing another several acres of hay meadow from the countryside to an unnatural use is another blow ultimately to us all. As I stated in my original letter, it is unnatural for canines from many areas to be using such a confined area in, year out. Land has evolved for higher densities of herbivores and much lower densities of canines. Canines, i.e. dogs, are by nature top predators and as such, agents and susceptible to pathogens, diseases, and insect-borne vectors. Existing diseases such as Lyme disease, anaplasma, toxitis, which is actually being warned about on the Derbyshire County Council website, and newer ones are emerging, Alabama rot, etc., to name a few. This proposed change of use for a few dogs, is not for a few local dogs. Now and again, it is a permanent change of use that one does not sit healthy agricultural land use in the valley. It is detrimental to wildlife. It sets a precedent. If approved, it is another tooth in the cogs turning in the decline of the great British countryside. Thank you.
Thank you. If you should remain where you are. Are there any questions for the speakers? Councillor Elliott?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one. You mentioned it used to be farmed for hay.
Yes.
When was it last farmed? When was it last cut?
Taken off it last year.
Okay, local farmer.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, if you'd like to take your seat.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Catherine Botros. Thank you. If you'd like to state your name and then it's 3 minutes. You just state your name and then it's 3 minutes when you're ready.
Catherine Botros. Okay. My name is Catherine Botros and I have lived at Little Chatsworth, the property above the field, for over 45 years. It is the field effectively at the bottom of my garden. I would like to object to this planning application for the following reasons. From a personal point of view, having only retired recently, I was looking forward to finally enjoying my home and garden overlooking the beautiful and peaceful Cordwell Valley. To be threatened, therefore, by the prospect of the constant barking of multiple dogs and their owners shouting instructions, it is extremely upsetting. The proposed change of use of the field shows no regard to the effect this will have on the residents of the Cordwell Valley. There is no local demand for this. There are currently over 50 footpaths and 10 bridle paths and many other suitable locations in the Holmesfield Cordwell Valley where animals can be exercised for such activity. When searching on www.dogparksnearme.co.uk, there are 2 dog walking field facilities within 5 miles of here and 18 within 25 miles. Among these existing sites, there is already a dog training facility, Pause and Play Gun Dogs, based in Lidge at Holmesfield, a much more appropriate and suitable site. And there is also one in Millhouses, Barkbusters Dog Training, which, having looked at the addresses of the supporters, is surely more conveniently placed for many of them, especially the supporting letters from members of the Bradway Pet Shop Facebook group, which was one of the Facebook groups asking for support for the applicant for this proposal. Ironically, if they were to use the proposed field, they would pass many more suitable sites on the way there. Under the government provisions, planning reforms must adhere to certain guidelines. If this is passed, an example of these guidelines not being adhered to is that they must enable planning decisions to be taken at the lowest possible level with the involvement of local people. I note that there are 71 registered locals against the application and only 2 in favour. The alleged other 75 out of 77 supporters are not locals, living in some cases over 10 miles away in Hillsborough or Alfreton 17 miles away, both of which will involve round trips for single dogs of over 40 miles, no doubt powered by diesel or petrol engines. Almost 100% of the locals are opposed to this for all of the reasons which the local authority is obliged by the government to take into account when deciding upon such a proposal. We do not want or need this facility, and it will cause only harm to the Cordwell Valley. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Cooper?
Yeah, good afternoon. How close is your property to the field, please?
It's directly above. So my garden goes on to the entrance field, and my neighbour's attached property goes right onto the field.
So in terms of meterage, how close is your property though? How close is your property to the field?
Well, there's my property, the garden, the field.
Okay, so what's the distance between your property and the field? So I've got an idea how big the garden is.
Measure 50 feet.
50 feet. Okay.
All right.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. No other questions? If you'd like to take your seat.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Holly Brotros. You just state your name and then it's 3 minutes when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Holly Stewart Bamford. If this proposal is allowed to go ahead, the impact on the area, immediate residents, agricultural land, road users, walkers, cyclists and horse riders will be substantial. It will increase danger, traffic and noise to the area and be detrimental to the views and look of the Greenbelt from both sides of the valley. Without someone constantly on site, it is impossible to maintain an effective level of monitoring of numbers of people, cars, dogs, noise, people leaving and entering on time. This will also set a precedent for the valley for future planning and is an unnecessary addition which does not benefit any locals. There is also a large worry that once change of use is gained, more training ideas and dog walkers could be added and cars, car parking areas and dogs increased. Also, as the planning goes with the land, not the person, future developments could then happen more easily once change of use is granted. The planning report in 6.20 states that the applicant will limit the number of dogs to 4 per session. This is the same number as is suggested on the applicant's website, which states that we walk up to 4 dogs, occasionally 5 at any one time. However, when looking at the applicant's social media, she daily uploads photos of her walking groups of dogs of more like 8 to 10, which is of great concern. If the applicant isn't consistent to her own rules, I don't have much faith in her monitoring and limiting other people's numbers when occasionally checking the site by CCTV and 1 site visit per day. I also note from the applicant's social media that her dog walks show dogs in large groups in many different locations, nearly always off the lead. This to me shows that there isn't a shortage of places to walk dogs off leads and that she constantly does do this, showing the need for such a facility is even less required. This proposal offers no enhancement to the area or Greenbelt. We are not in need of such a business, and I can't see how it can offer local employment. It affects perceptual qualities such as tranquility, as referred to in SDC 3 of the original planning statement. It does not, as referred to in DC 12 of the planning statement, make a positive contribution to the quality of the local environment, nor does it enhance the quality and local identity of existing communities and their surroundings. It has no positive effect on any of the immediate or further afield surrounding areas. It does not, as referred to also in SDC 12, protect the amenity of existing occupiers and create a good quality of amenity for future occupants of land or buildings, including in relation to privacy, overlooking, overshadowing, and or any overbearing impact.
30 seconds remain.
I have personally spent a lot of time speaking to a large number of residents in and around Cordwell Valley, including all residents of Millthorpe Lane. I can unequivocally say that not one person I've spoken to either supports this facility nor would use it. The general view is that this proposal will do nothing other than harm the enjoyment and aesthetics of a beautiful area and the lives of everyone who lives here. From every local aspect, there is nothing positive for Caldwell Valley about the proposed application.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Hall?
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Hi.
You sound really knowledgeable about the actual applicants, application. So I'm just going to ask, you may not be able to answer, but when you talk about up to 4 or even 5 dogs at a time, is that from one household then, do you mean? Is that,
Well, I'm talking about on her website, she states that she walks up to 4 dogs, occasionally 5 at any one time, to ensure that the dogs get looked after properly. However, when looking at photographs and things on her social media, she has groups of more like 8 to 10. So when you're being told that there's only going to be 4 dogs allowed in the field at any one time, which is what it says in the planning report, that doesn't really match with her website.
Okay, I just thought I'd ask. I mean, I'll ask the applicant, that's all, because my concern is whether they're 4 separate families or 4 dogs from one family, but I'll ask her. It's okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. If you'd like to take your seat. Okay.
Actually, Chair, if the other speakers can now come in, so if you could then go back to the executive meeting room, that'd be very helpful. Thank you. Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm going to take you in order of the names I've got written down in front of me. So the first speaker I have is Ashley Turner. If you'd like to take a seat. If you'd like to state your name, and then it's 3 minutes when you're ready.
I'm Ashley Turner, local resident. Ladies and gentlemen of the Planning Committee, I submitted my opposition to this application to the planning officers on the 2nd of July last year, and I would like to underline and enlarge on my views to you, the Planning Committee. I have 3 points of contention: unnecessity, unsuitability, no local benefit. And together, these demonstrate there is no justification for further violation of the Green Belt. Unnecessity. Parish of Holmesfield extends to 4,500 acres, second largest in Derbyshire, and has 62 footpaths and bridleways, which provide over 23 miles of dog walking opportunity for everybody. Further to that, most local residences have gardens, which can be used for dog exercise and training. Very few residents would have use for this proposed facility, as indicated by the letters of support. Only 2 of the 77 supporters come from Holmesfield. For those that may want to use such a facility, I've ascertained that there are at least 10 others existing within a 20-mile radius. There are 2 as close as Chesterfield. There is no requirement in Holmesfield. Unsuitability. I repeat a statement I make regularly nowadays, and that is the Caudle Valley is a very, very special place. It has survived hundreds of years as an outstanding and relatively unscarred example of traditional English farming countryside, encased in a spectacularly beautiful valley. It's vital to our heritage to protect such places that still remain. The insertion of a gated compound into this stunning environment, an important heritage site, is next to sacrilege. And the intended change of use is totally out of context within this delicate environment. Dogs in such numbers don't mix with farm livestock or horses, and they can seriously disrupt wildlife.
30 seconds remaining.
Traffic problems and noise pollution would be inevitable. In my opinion, none of the attempted mitigation can possibly resolve these issues, and indeed nothing else could. In rural areas, tranquility is a benefit to take for granted, and many come to enjoy it. How does this contend with 365 days a year of barking, shouting, and whistling? The Caudle Valley is not a suitable location.
That's time, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No, thank you. If you'd like to take a seat. Our next speaker is Nick Todd. If you'd like to state your name, and it's 3 minutes when you're ready.
My name is Nicholas Todd. I'm a retired chartered surveyor, and I live about 1.5 miles on the other side of the valley. I would say that I can hear the hounds when they're fed, and they're 2.5 miles away in the same direction. I wrote and objected to this scheme in 2022. Comments I made are still relevant, but various things have happened since. Untrained dogs are presumably seen as a threat to the public. Has the planning officer or the applicant shown that there is a danger to public? How many people are actually bitten in public places? So one wonders whether facility is necessary. However, if it is needed, and it is perceived to be needed, why put the facility where owners have to use their cars to take the dog to train it? Surely councils and the cities who are adopting 15-minute cities have a duty to try and minimise private vehicle use. Granting this permission flies in the face of zero emissions. If there is a need, which clearly the applicants believe, they should be approaching the councils to set up secure areas within local parks where people can walk their dogs off the lead. This is actually a better way of training the dog because it's more likely to pay attention if it's had a walk before it's trained. It would alleviate the car journeys, avoid causing the neighbours losing privacy and being subject to continuous noise pollution from cars, banging dogs, banging doors, and dogs and whistles. The houses adjacent, and you've seen Catherine, have no back gardens. The whole of their land is in front of their house and immediately adjacent to this proposal. So rather than the planners have said that there's no increase over and above agricultural use on that site means that it's cut for hay twice a year, or occasionally somebody takes a horse and leaves it for a few days, or a few sheep. It's not every single day all the time. So it's rubbish to say there's no increase in noise. I have, from my own experience of planning, realised that an increase in noise is minimal. It's the amount it's allowed to be increased is minimal, especially when the starting point is 0. So
30 seconds remain.
I think this is a scam. I think these people are wanting to get approval for animal husbandry on this site. Once they've got that, it leaves a loophole open to apply for a residence on a site where animal husbandry is. So I think in the long term, they're trying to get a house on the site in the Greenbelt.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No, if you'd like to take a seat, thank you. The next speaker is Helen Geary. If you'd like to state your name and 3 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Helen Geary. I live in Millthorpe, about half a mile away from the proposed site. I'm a dog owner, a horse owner, and a horse rider. On behalf of over 40 local residents who have registered today, I'm speaking to you, the committee, on their behalf in order to save time and repetition over the many strong objections to this proposed application. My points are as follows. Danger to the public has not been assessed. Recent fatalities from dog attacks have been put down by specialists to the fact that when dogs are excited or released, they adopt a more aggressive nature. Human nature, sadly, will result in gates being left open with noise and aggression from these dogs being set free in a strange environment, resulting in danger to children in adjoining properties, walkers on the road, and horses both ridden in the nearby fields and stables. In addition, the deer gates proposed are not self-closing. All monitoring is by the applicant only. The CCTV coverage, the enforcement of the terms and conditions, and the code of conduct are to be managed only by the applicant. This monitoring is not enforceable by the council. Whilst the amended code of conduct dated 28th of February 2023 is comprehensive and seeks to protect the local community, it is only as good as those that monitor the use. The traffic figures do not reflect the true picture as seen by residents on a daily basis. After the approval, intensification of the use can take place as no conditions proposed restrict the actual level of activity. Only 4 car parking spaces are provided, but there is no control enforceable by the council to restrict the number of or types of vehicles using this site. The only control is by the applicant. 73 objections are from local people. 75 of the 77 letters of support are from people who have no affinity with the locality and will have little or no regard for local residents. Those visitors will not know the nature of local traffic and the nature of the road users. The forthcoming changes to the planning system are that it should be community-led. The substantial weight of local opinion is that even a trial period should not be allowed. This use is not in the interests of our local community. Whilst the trial period may ensure the applicant sticks to the code of practice during that 2-year period, after that time, councils are required to offer a full planning permission rather than a mere extension for a further period. It is at that time that problems occur when the incentive to toe the line has gone. Noise will travel across the valley in this quiet
30
location.
seconds remain.
Whilst no amplified noise is allowed, barking dogs and people shouting instructions cannot be controlled and will affect the tranquility, especially in the early mornings and evenings when the background noise is at its lowest. The true effect of noise issues has not been portrayed or understood by the applicant or the EHO. There is no control over pollution, which is enforceable by the council. Daily monitoring and management for cleaning is again solely down to the applicant through the code of conduct. This dog walking site is not wanted, needed, or required under any circumstances by any of the local residents.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
So if you just wait there, just in case there's any questions, you've got the mark.
I was leaving.
Are there any questions? No, I think you're okay. No,
Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Maureen Greenland. Again, if you'd like to state your name and 3 minutes when you're ready.
Hello, I'm Maureen Greenland. I have some sympathy for the owners of difficult dogs, but I don't think that a field in Millthorpe Lane is the place to solve their problems. It's obvious that there's very strong opposition to this scheme for many different reasons, including the barking and shouting, the lack of supervision, the detriment to the environment, and also the fear that the site could be further developed in the future. These are all significant and valid concerns. However, my main worry is that the proposed training field is in the wrong place. At the best of times, it's not easy to drive up or down Millthorpe Lane. It's narrow, it's bendy, and it's dangerous in places. There are always some motorists who drive too fast down the lane or in the middle of the road round the bends. Every hour, a bus goes up and another comes down. As well as cars and vans, there are tractors and other farm machinery. If you happen to meet horses or one of these large vehicles, you have to react quickly to avoid an accident. At the top of Millthorpe Lane, there's a notoriously dangerous junction with Cartledge Lane. There have been several accidents and many near misses on that sharp bend in recent years. Any increase in traffic caused by this proposal would just make matters worse. The field in question lies between two blind bends in the lane. To have cars slowing down to look for the entrance and later popping back out into the gate from the gateway onto the road would add another hazard. Also, with nobody there to supervise, any confusion over arrivals and departures, or parking, or even trouble with the gate could lead to congestion that could spill out onto the road. The development plan statement says that the scheme would be, quote, a new community facility to address a need within the local area, unquote. It's clear that there isn't a need in this area, and there would be no benefit to the local community. The opposite, in fact. I suggest that this plan should be given more thought and carried out in a more suitable
30 seconds
location.
remain.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No, if you'd like to take a seat. Thank you. And our next speaker is Sarah Nash. If you'd like to state your name and 3 minutes when you're ready.
Okay. Good afternoon, I'm Sarah Nash. In March 22, the planning application biodiversity report said there was minimal bird life seen at the time of the visit, but said it is clear that the boundary trees and shrub vegetation will form a significant habitat for nesting birds, small mammals, and for bat foraging. In October 22, the ecology report said a total of just 2 species of birds were observed, wood pigeon and buzzard. Both of these are species of low conservation concern on the RSPB green list. The grassland field lacked nesting opportunities for birds as it was open field used for grazing and mowing regime. Contrary to these reports, this field is actually grass meadow, not grazed and only mowed once a year by a local farmer for haylage. We own adjoining land and know this field has been left fallow for a number of years, providing an ideal grassland meadow habitat for a large number of birds, bats, mammals, insects and pollinators. This meadow, along with other surrounding fields, is normally cut once in late summer, providing undisturbed habitat for wildlife and allowing grass and other plants to reset naturally. We cannot simply dismiss the impact on wildlife and loss of habitat caused by land development. In fact, the latest RSPB listing shows a number of birds that were on the green list are now on the amber or red list, primarily due to agricultural land development, resulting in loss of suitable habitat. This grassland and boundaries provide ideal habitat for many birds of high conservation concern, including tawny owl, sparrowhawk, kestrel, yellowhammer, fieldfare, all of which are seen in the area throughout the year. Barn owls rest in buildings adjacent to this field and are regularly seen hunting across this area. We live in a conservation area at Cartledge and strive to uphold the legal and moral requirements to protect and support flora and fauna. Our aim is to protect and promote wildlife by managing the various natural habitats on our land and thus the surrounding area. The development of this field into a dog exercise compound, even with codes of conduct for dog owners, will adversely affect the wildlife populations in this grassland meadow and surrounding fields. This development may be viewed as just another field, but our wildlife is under increasing pressure caused primarily by
30
loss of
seconds remain.
habitat. We own dogs ourselves and do understand that some dog owners may have a need for an exercise compound, but this must not be at the expense of our already beleaguered wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No, if you'd like to take a seat, that's lovely. Thank you. Our next speaker is the applicant, Harriet Wordsworth. If you'd like to state your name, 3 minutes when you're ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Harriet Wordsworth. I understand that the concept of a secure dog field will be new to some people, and unfortunately there seems to have been some false speculation which has caused some reservations with residents. There are many secure dog fields operating around the country which provide safe, controlled environments for people to exercise their dogs, with field owners working alongside local communities to ensure they're not disruptive. This is not a free-for-all dog park. It's a private field that individuals can hire on an exclusive basis to walk and train their dog. Most dog owners will want focused one-to-one time with their pets. There will not be multiple dogs and owners using the space at the same time. The field is naturally secluded with hedges and trees along the boundaries, providing an environment which reduces triggers that may cause dogs to bark. The proposed planting of trees will not only enhance this, but help to increase biodiversity and create a more natural environment. I agree with the officer's report in section 6.33 that the use is unlikely to create any more noise than the activity of walking dogs in the countryside using public footpaths. I am personally committed to being a good neighbour and wish to support the local community at the same time as providing an important safe space for dog owners. I have built up a successful dog walking business over the last six and a half years. This has been based on people putting their trust in me, and I will do everything I can to maintain my good reputation with something that has been a dream of mine for a long time. I will be very mindful of who I allow to use the field. This is my land and I want it to be respected and well cared for. The same goes for the surrounding environment. I will have clear rules for field users. I will meet everybody personally and talk through their code of conduct at their induction. Anyone found to not be adhering to the code of conduct will no longer be permitted to use the field, and I hope that residents will come to me with any issues so that I can deal with them swiftly and appropriately. The people using the field will be investing time and paying good money to walk their own dog. They'll be responsible dog owners looking to enhance their dog's well-being. I expect people to have
30
positive
seconds remain.
experiences in a beautiful environment, to be respectful of it and the neighbours. If only 2 years permission is initially granted, this will present a significant financial risk for me due to the high startup costs. But it is a risk that I'm willing to take because I'm confident that once the field is up and running, the local community will see that it's a low impact asset to the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Liggett and Councillor Cooper? Councillor
Yeah.
Hancock.
You're a dog walker.
Yes.
How many dogs do you exercise at once?
For my dog walking business, we do take up to 8 dogs, which is what we're insured for. That will be separate to this dog field business because this field will only allow 4 dogs at a time.
So you could be taking 4 dogs at a time.
I could be. I probably won't, but it's more for individuals to hire for them
And
to take their dog to.
They could be from different houses, basically, different people's dogs.
Yes.
Yeah.
So say a friend might want to meet another friend with their dog at the field.
No, I meant you personally.
Oh.
So if you take 4 dogs, are they all from the same house or are they?
No, with my dog walking clients, they generally are from different houses.
And how often do you propose to mow the field?
Well, actually, I'm hoping to, during the summer months when it'll need mowing a bit more often, I'm hoping to keep some longer grass because dogs like to sniff and explore. They love actually running in long grass. So I'm hoping to have sections of different lengths of grass at different times and kind of rotate the mowing so that it's not mowed, say, fortnightly through the summer all over.
So some areas could be mowed fortnightly.
Some areas,
Right.
shorter grass, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Cooper?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions, please, if I may. Is it anticipated that at some point, either the people bringing the dogs or yourself will hire professional dog trainers to be part of this exercise?
Yeah, I would welcome people to bring a trainer with them if that's what they want to do. All I ask in the code of conduct is that they let me know beforehand so I can make sure that it's appropriate and that they have the right insurances and things like that.
Okay, and dog fouling, I know it's been an issue raised. What's the plan around dog fouling, cleaning up, collection, etc.?
We will have a dog waste bin, which will be collected probably weekly or fortnightly by a commercial waste company. So everybody will be encouraged to pick up their own dog waste and either leave it in the bin or take it home with them. I'll be checking the field daily to make sure that waste is picked up. But yeah, it's just the same as anywhere walking in the countryside. There will probably be some people that leave it, unfortunately. But that's something that I'll have to keep an eye on. And if people keep abusing that, then they won't be permitted to use the field.
Okay. Thanks for that. And fine. You've obviously got some experience with this, and you've said it's a dream of yours, etc. And obviously, there's a financial implication for yourself.
Yeah.
How many people do you expect will use this over a year? This facility. How many people do you expect will use this over a year to make it financially viable for yourself?
That's a good question. With my dog walking business, I have a lot of loyal clients and they're all dogs that I walk regularly. We don't have any really ad hoc dogs. And I'm kind of hoping with this business be the same, that we get regular clients coming at least once a week. And I'll get to know them personally and I want to avoid new people and people coming infrequently. I want to get to know the people that are using it. We'll only be operational during daylight hours, so it will vary through the year as to how many dogs are coming. So it's hard to kind of say. I think during the summer months, there'll be 13 field sessions per day, and during the winter there'll be 8 field sessions per day. But that doesn't necessarily mean they'll be fully booked. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Councillor Hancock?
Thanks, Chair. Just a couple of brief ones from me that are linked, to be honest. You say you're keen to work with the local community, and obviously we've heard that there's a fair bit of resistance.
Yeah.
What have you actually done to work with them so far to kind of develop it to where it is now?
Difficult because I haven't wanted to in the planning process and any of haven't wanted to these. So it has quite difficult to stand back and let people jump to the wrong conclusion about things. And the residents that buy the field and Clara Stables as well. So yeah, I know there's been a lot of false kind of information spread around the community through letters and door-to-door speaking and things. So it has been difficult for me to step back and not get involved in that. But yeah, there's not been a lot that I could have done really.
Right. And I mean, while we've been sat here, I've been kind of scribbling notes as people have said things that they would even suggest as improvements, even though they were sort of anti. And so would you be kind of open to having those dialogues with them and things like self-closing gates if it were to actually go
Of
ahead?
course, yeah.
Thank
I'd
you.
hope that people would come to me with suggestions.
Councillor Hall, then Councillor.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Just a few questions and points. When you say it's going to be, the field is going to be rented out, how long a period do people rent it for? Is it like 1 hour? Is it 8 hours? Is it split into like 2 sessions? There's a few points I'll might as well ask them together if you don't mind, please. I mean, you say about training, if you're not providing the training, it's relying on someone, on the hunt to bring the. Oh, I mean, you'll have to excuse me. It's okay. I know being in the country, I live at Drumfield, and I've been around this area. Drumfield, running. I do quite a bit of exercise. Another couple of points I was going to ask is about when you say up to 4 dogs, but if they're not from the same family, if they're total like strangers, then what is to stop dogs attacking each other in a way? I mean, people talk about wildlife being attacked, but if dogs could try attacking each other. The other point is when you say about noise, I do have to disagree on you when you say the noise of this would be the same as somebody taking a dog for a walk in the open countryside. I have to agree, I'm sorry to say, because somebody walking past your house within a few minutes, even if the dog is barking, with a few minutes, it's gone. I don't know how many days this is going to operate. If it's 7 days a week, then you've got dogs barking, you've got members of the public shouting or calling the dogs, whistle blowing. It's not the same. Sorry, countryside, anyway, as well as I say, we're a dog owner, and it seems strange.
You've got a question, not just an observation.
Sorry, yeah, a question. Well,
That's okay. I can talk through those points if you like, but you might just need to remind me what they were.
The question is, I mean, the question is really, I was just picking up a few points. Right. How many hours is it going to be rented out to a person?
Okay.
And how many days a week will it be used then? Thank you.
Okay. I think also your first question was about how long were the field sessions during the day. So we'll start on the hour and they'll be for 50 minutes long, which will leave 10 minutes in between people coming and going so that hopefully there's no crossover. If there is a crossover, that's why we've incorporated another hard standing area for them as a waiting or turning area for people to leave. The operational hours will vary during summer and winter months because of the daylight hours. So I think there's 13 hours during the winter months and 8 hours during the summer months, with varying kind of hours as the daylight gets longer. What else did you ask me? Sorry.
That was it, really, just how many days is it going to be?
It'll be 7 days a week.
Thank you.
Can
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions just so that I can understand your business model. And when this opposition to it, it's going to take people a lot of travelling to get to. So it's going to have a traffic in the countryside. Is there a requirement for this activity in the UK? I'm not aware of it anywhere else. And have you tested the market? Because you seem a little unsure of how many people you're going to get using the site.
I started looking for some land about 4 or 5 years ago. And it's quite difficult to find land that's actually for sale. But also that meets the requirements. I needed a piece of land that could be accessed from the road directly without kind of there being people around. I think, tried on 3 or 4 other locations, and for various reasons they weren't suitable. So for when this piece of land came up for sale in 2021, that's when I started looking into it and realised that actually it was really suitable because it's nice and secluded. Yeah, and it seemed like it would work, even though there are 2 properties at the top of the field. There weren't any kind of surrounding it. So even though I know there has been a lot of opposition, that is one thing that I did consider, that there weren't many properties around. What was the next point?
The next point was...
Oh, about people driving.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I bought the land, I bought the field before obviously I'd put the planning application in, and before I knew that there was going to be so much opposition. But I think people have got the wrong impression about what the field is. I think they think there's going to be a lot more noise and activity than there is, and I think that's why there's been so much opposition. Secure dog fields, there are around 1,000 in the country, all operating without any problems. And you could, if you wanted to have a look, there's various websites like dogwalkingfields.co.uk, which is a directory website. You can see how many there are on there. So I know it is new to some people, but to a lot of people, especially that have had puppies or dogs from rescue centres that need time to spend training their dog in a secure environment. A lot of people are scared, and it's for those dogs that have had operations or are in season. They need a private space to kind of exercise, not necessarily train, but just to exercise in their own space. That's the main reason for dog walking fields.
Yeah, and the final point was around testing the market. Has the market been tested in that particular area? The requirements?
I know from social media that there are always people asking, does anybody know if there's a secure area where I can take my dog? I'm in a lot of community groups, and that is just something that comes up all the time, especially for dogs like greyhounds and dogs that are prone to not have very good recall when they're off the lead, like beagles and scent hounds. So that is something that comes up, which I just generally see anyway. But I did do a Facebook post just to see kind of what the interest would be, and received over 100 emails of people, you know, really desperate to find out some more information. Once we're open, I'm not actually thinking that I will need to advertise. I will just contact the people that I know are needing somewhere. And again, wanting to keep it like a smaller group of regular customers. So yeah, I don't think I'll need to advertise because there is so much interest.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Armitage, then Councillor Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Would you, I take it you're going to be training dogs on this?
I won't be personally training the dogs. It'll be up to the owners to practice their training with their dog. They may wish to invite a trainer to join them in the field.
So dogs will be trained in that field?
Yes.
Right. So when you train a dog, it isn't, would you agree that it's not a question of you have to repeat it probably twice a day before the dog gets it into its head which way to behave? Would you agree?
No, it depends on the training method, really. A lot of people use clicker training these days. If you go to puppy training classes, things are certainly repeated a lot more than twice a day. Within a few minutes, actually, you're only supposed to train them for a few minutes at a time before giving them a break and playing. Otherwise, it's just too much for them. So it just depends on the method, really.
So these people will obviously have to come back 2 or 3 times then in the day. Would you agree?
No, not necessarily.
But
I wouldn't expect them to.
But you just said that you give them a break. When I train dogs, I do either end of the day, and it's worked quite nicely.
I think that's just personal preference.
Well, it's worked. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Jones.
And it's about the business plan, because I think you'll be charging quite a good amount for these people to get there for 50 minutes in. Yeah, and they're coming a long way, a lot of them. And they're paying for a trainer. Do you think they might start putting a lot of pressure on you to provide the facilities? Like if dogs are wandering around that field every day and it's been raining and they're coming back all muddy, will they be saying to you, can we have a dog cleaning thing? I think stuff like that, to expect something more for the money, because I think I would.
Okay, that's a good point. A lot of dog walking fields around the country do have lots of nice facilities like that. They'll have a field shelter so that people can stand out of the rain while their dog runs around. Personally, that's not something that I would want anyway, because I want them to be keeping an eye on the dog at all times and picking up their poo. And yes, some people do offer dog wash facilities, obstacles, sensory gardens. And initially, in the early days, that's what I was hoping to offer. But I think it's just as important for dogs to be able to sniff and enjoy their environment. And obviously, we've taken into consideration that it's in the belt, so there won't be any structures or obstacles or anything like that in the field. In a different place, then that might have been feasible, but it's not something that we're looking at.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. While we're talking about the facilities for the dogs, what about public convenience? How long is the field hired out for? By the hour, by the 2 hours, by the morning?
It's an hour with 50. So it's every hour there's a 50-minute session. If people want to book more than one session, they can do.
What about public toilet for these people that?
There won't be any toilets and people will be aware of that before they come. So that's up to them.
That starts.
They
to
can
worry.
always
What about
leave
water on site?
to-
Any water on the site?
No, they will need to bring their own water.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? I actually have, Councillor, I'll jump in before you. I actually have two for you. Harriet, can you tell me the distance that you actually would have to travel to the field? And the second question I have is, you've mentioned tree planting and it's in the scheme. Now, are these mature trees or are they just going to be whips?
Okay. I live about 7 minutes away from the field, indoor, so just in Sheffield. And the trees around the entrance will be mature trees. The hedging trees to for the gaps that are in the hedging hasn't actually been decided what kind of how high they will be. Maybe we will need to plant some more mature, just whips, based on what Claire was saying about the already established boundary trees that are there. Maybe it is something that we need to consider, that they'll be more mature.
Okay. Councillor Hall? You have a question?
Yes, a question. Sorry if I was boring you earlier, but it was something else I was going to pick up on. And one of the things you mentioned about the dog waste bins being emptied once or twice a week now by a commercial contractor, would there be a potential for you to get them emptied more often? I've just had a quick on Dronfield Town Council website and it said they empty their dog waste bins twice a week on a Monday and Thursday, where you say you'd get yours emptied once a week or once a fortnight. Is the potential to get them emptied more frequently?
I'm sure there is, but I don't think it will be necessary. There won't be anywhere near as many dogs using the field as there would be a council bin.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Elliott?
I forgot this one, Chair. So I've got to be honest, I knew nothing about dog park, and I'm a dog owner as well. But dog parks never come to me. I'm trying to get into my own skull why I would pay to walk my dog, not with a trainer, just to walk my dog around a fenced field, as opposed to walking through the valley corridor at the bottom, or any of the footpaths between Cartilage and Millthorpe Lane, or between the Rutland and the Royal Oak. You know, I'm just trying to work out why I would pay to walk around a field as opposed to walking like most people do. Where do you walk your 4 dogs a day or whatever you walk?
We walk in public spaces.
You've answered my question, really.
But the purpose of being retained. So going back to the other gentleman's question about the fencing, it's 6 foot deer fencing with rabbit netting around the bottom. That's more to keep the dogs contained rather than wildlife out.
So while you're talking about 6 foot fencing, sorry, Chair, this has just come to me while this has been mentioned.
Yeah.
So Little Chatsworth, which is probably 15 metres from one of the boundaries of that field, do you think they're going to appreciate a six foot fence at the bottom of their garden, where they had an open countryside view across the valley?
I think actually their properties are about 55 metres from the boundary. And then we have also left a 20-metre buffer from the top of the boundary of the field before the fencing starts. And it's not a solid fence, it's wire mesh stop fencing like you would find in any farmer's field.
Yeah, if you look through a fence like that, I'll agree with you. You can look through it. If you look down a fence like that and the posts do that, it looks like a blank wall.
I don't think they would be able to look down it, to be honest, because
I think we're getting into the detail, and I don't think that's probably necessary. And my point was about building a fence next to somebody who's lived there forever. And if you're setting it in 15 metres away again, is that 15 metres not going to be dead land that your field is not going to be used for?
It'll be a wildflower meadow, which is that's what we've proposed, to have a wildflower meadow in that area.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions? Thank you very much. If you'd like to take a seat, and our next speaker is the agent, Martin Seedon. You'd like to state your name and then it's 3 minutes. when you're
I'm
ready.
Martin Seddon. I'm the agent for the application. So chairs, members of the committee, I know this application was called in by the local ward member having regard to the use of the land within the green belt in terms of its impact on the landscape, traffic and noise. Well, this is a recreational use in the green belt. Care has been taken to keep the field and landscape open by locating the car parking near the road. Other than fencing, improving the access and laying out the parking spaces, no building is proposed. And just to reiterate on the point of the separation from Little Chatsworth, there's a 20-metre buffer zone between Little Chatsworth and the fencing. And that's going to be a wildflower meadow and create some habitat, so there won't be fencing directly next to Little Chatsworth. An ecological survey has been undertaken. All the existing trees and vegetation around the site boundary will be retained, and there's pretty substantial major trees and undergrowth there that will all be retained and protected. They'll be enhanced by additional tree and hedge planting and the creation of the wildlife meadow habitat. There'll be some margin around the edge of the site where the grass will be left to grow long. It will be outside the fence, outside the secure area. The officers have concluded in their reports that the use is appropriate to the character of the countryside location and is appropriate development in the green belt. The County Council has considered our highway consultant's report, restricted traffic levels and access design, and has no objections subject to conditions. The officers are satisfied that the intensity of use of the site would not generate a significant number of trips to or from the site that would cause undue pressure on local infrastructure or cause highway safety issues. A noise management plan has been submitted, which limits the number of cars and dogs per session, but it's a 1 hour session to 1 hour session, and prohibits the use of loud training aids such as whistles. Any users who don't abide by the site code of conduct rules will be banned by the applicant, and that's clear. Environmental Health suggested a 2-year temporary permission. Whilst
30 seconds remain.
Thanks. Whilst it's restricted for the applicant from a business point of view, and we don't expect this process, it does mean that the nearest residents will have the opportunity to report any issues while the field is in use. In this respect, the officers have concluded that subject to conditions, the proposed use would not lead to any undetectable harm to the amenity levels currently enjoyed by neighbouring occupiers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No. Councillor Elliott?
Always a question, Chair. Always a question. Talking about the monitoring and supervision over this 2-year period, who will be doing it?
That will be the applicant, and there'll be a records kept of who's actually using the field, how many dogs is it, how many cars are involved. So obviously, that evidence will
be there.
And CCTV monitoring as well on the gate. So,
thank you. You also mentioned an ecology report. Who performed that?
It was Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can visit. Again, I'd like this part of our proceedings focused on getting clarity about any points that you're sure of. Once we've done this, we can have a discussion the application based on what heard read. I'm grateful if you not move any at this stage and wait till we've had a chance to make our assessments. Thank you. Councillor Liggett?
Yeah, a couple of questions for Adrian, I would imagine. Will this site stay as a greenfield site when it's changed? Anything? Oh, the site, will it then go to brownfield if it was permitted?
Interesting question. Site remain green in nature, but it would take on a different use. Absolutely. So from that respect, it would retain its agricultural use, and therefore, sadly, it would become a brownfield site.
Another question, Adrian, is tranquility rating. Is it equal?
Tranquility rating, Chair, I set out a report by the County Council as part of their work on the areas of multiple environmental sensitivity work that they did, which is allied to landscape character and countryside character, I guess, and the value of the countryside. So that's part of their study. And as I say, it's set out at paragraph 6.15 in the officer report in respect of that.
Do we have a lot of those sites in our area?
The areas of multiple environmental sensitivity,
Yeah.
yes. There's primary areas and secondary areas, and it does cover a significant amount of the district. The plan stroke map of that, if members are interested, is set out in your local plan. So you can have a look at that if you wish. It's one of the appendices at the back.
Councillor Clough?
Thank you, Chair. Adrian, I'm just curious. We've been talking about noise mitigation. There's going to be a changeover. There's four parking spaces. There's going to be a changeover every 50 minutes. There's going to be allowed up to 4 dogs for each session. So over an 8-hour period, that is a lot of dogs. What I can't get into my head is why there is not going to be any more noise impact in that area when there's significant increase in traffic and dog activity.
I don't think I would seek to say to members that there wouldn't be an increase in noise. It's whether that increase in noise or activity is, in planning terms, overriding and harmful. And that's the assessment that we've sought to undertake as officers. And on the basis of the advice we received from environmental health colleagues, the terms and conditions of use, the code of conduct and the noise management, which the permission, if it were granted, would be subject to. The advice is from environmental health officers that, in their opinion, that's likely to be acceptable, but that's why they recommend the temporary 2-year consent to allow that to be tested in reality, so that it gives the opportunity for the applicant to operate the site in accordance with the stated objectives and the code of conduct, etc., and allows the local planning authority to monitor that. So if it wasn't being undertaken in an acceptable way in accordance with those terms, the authority has the opportunity at the end of the 2-year period to reassess the whole matter. And one of the speakers did rightly say that the next step would be to grant a full planning permission or not. It wouldn't be normally you can have another temporary permission, then another temporary permission. It would be a 2-year. Is the use acceptable during that time? Do we receive loads of objections and loads of complaints about how the site is being operated? It gives the local planning authority the opportunity of having that temporary control over the use and not permitting a permanent use to exactly test that. So I'm not sitting here and saying there wouldn't be an increase in activity, and there's bound to be an increase in noise, doors closing, chat, and dogs barking. I don't think I would seek to say that wouldn't happen, but it's whether that activity and that noise levels is acceptable in planning terms or not. And that's the assessment that you will need to make as a committee. And that's the assessment that we've undertaken as planning officers in conjunction with environmental health colleagues. And our view is that it wouldn't, but the 2-year period will allow that control to remain. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think So what I'm struggling with is there's going to be room for 4 parking spaces, but we're only talking about one family household with allowed up to 4 dogs and then changeover. So I would have expected to only see 2 parking spaces, not 4. So for me, it's slightly confusing, the information that we've heard up to now and the fact that they're going to need 4 parking spaces. And that is going to be detrimental to the noise pollution and environmental pollution in that area.
Just if I can come back, Chair. First of all, in terms of the noise and activity, I'd reiterate what I said a few minutes ago. You will need to take a view on that based on what you've heard and what you've read and what the discussion's been around. If you were concerned particularly about 4 car parking spaces rather than 2, you've heard the applicant say that is to avoid any at the changeover times where there may be duplication space for that to happen. If that were your only concern and you wanted to grant a temporary permission or a full permission or whatever you would want on the back of only providing 2 spaces, that would be open to you. That could be controlled through condition if that was a particular concern of yours, but it may then lead to the potential for people turning up early or turning up late need to go somewhere, and that may lead to some on-road parking potentially. And that's what the plan that the applicant submitted seeks to ensure is avoided.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cooper, then Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. Quite simple, Adrian. When I asked the question earlier, I was told that the property was about 50 feet away. Since I've heard 55 metres. In the report, it says 55 metres. Presuming that's correct.
Just in terms of the measurements, Chair, the distance from Little Chatsworth, the main facade of Little Chatsworth cottages to the north, to the application boundary is approximately 45 metres. Then there's the set off within the site that you heard discussed, where there would be a further area beyond which the fencing would be erected, and between the two is projected in the longer term to be wildflower meadow. The issue that we've had in discussions as officers with the applicant and her agent is that the full-blown landscaping schemes, etc., bring with them additional cost and investment. So that's why at this point there's a limited amount of tree planting proposed, because if after the end of the 2-year period the consent wasn't renewed, there would have been a lot of investment from the applicant in that time. That's the approach. So you saw at the start there was a slide that we showed that showed the fencing in from the boundary, so that it's taken into account from that. The measurements in the report I would obviously stand by, but they're in respect of the facade of the property to the north, the distance from the outbuilding to the site boundary, and then the property further to the southwest, but that is a field beyond the application site. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, and thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Cooper's just asked one of mine there. Yeah, a couple of others though. In terms of because obviously I'm always dubious about putting conditions that are unenforceable on these things. Could we kind of put things like self-closing gate? I know one person who spoke raised concerns regarding potential health risks. Could we from dog disease and toxicity that go around? Could we put anything in conditions with regard to a maintenance of making sure that the ground is properly treated? So that such things go on there. And second one is actually, I don't know whether it's really a point of order or a question for the governance officers. Are we no longer advising people that there shouldn't be repetition, because we were having lots of the same points made again and again? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just in terms of the conditions, if I may, as Councillor Hancock's raised the issue, if you are, it is open to you if you are happy for the development to take place, but subject to those conditions, it's happy. You are
encouraged to do that rather than to refuse an application. And Councillor Hancock's nodding, so I'm sure appreciates that. My view on the two specifics that you've raised are that you could require and enforce a self-closing gate if you felt that was absolutely necessary for the development to go ahead. That could be enforced because it's in situ and is it there or isn't it there? Does it work or doesn't it there? In terms of the toxicity of the land, I would be reticent about doing that because I would ask whether that's actually needed to make the development acceptable. And I'm not sure I think it is. And in terms of enforceability, it's going to be very difficult for us to monitor that on a day-to-day basis and to achieve what end. So I'd be concerned about imposing that condition. And in terms of the self-closing gate, if you felt it was essential to go ahead, then you could impose that. But again, I would ask, is a self-closing gate absolutely essential to allow the development to go ahead in some form? Hopefully that helps.
Councillor Armitage.
Thank you. As far as I'm concerned, you've the nail on it, as you said. The field at the moment is in the green belt, and if planning permission is given, it reverts to a brownfield site, and surely this is completely against SS10 of the local plan.
We've set out in the report, Chair, the issues regarding SS10 and concluded accordingly in terms of how it sets up against the Greenbelt policy. So that needs to be your first assessment. And of course, similar considerations take place when you consider equine development in the Greenbelt. So you'd have some similar concerns and considerations as related to that. But in terms of this application, you should determine this application on its merits rather than be concerned about what may happen down the line.
No, I'm referring to the policy which we're meant to adhere to. I feel that you've not, you've gone down, it's going to be turned into a brownfield site, which if it was an industrial site, you soon, and that's a brownfield.
I'll try and help members, Chair, if there's some misunderstanding of the reasoning set out in the officer report. I believe we've gone through the various planning issues and planning considerations in order, and we've assessed the application against the council's Greenbelt policy, and that's what members need to do. And in terms of an officer opinion, it's the view of officers that it is in accordance with the outdoor recreation policy. It does preserve openness and doesn't conflict with the purposes of including land within it. So I'm not clear what Councillor Armitage is concerned about from that point of view, Chair.
It can't preserve openness when there's a deer fence all the way around. How can that be open?
That's the consideration that you as planning committee will need to consider and come to a conclusion on, Chair.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Chair. Adrian, I'm sorry to harp on about it, but I think that's probably one of the best questions that Councillor Liggett came up with. I need some more information now because I'm not sure I'm getting what you're talking about either, because Councillor Armitage has brought it up as well. If this is Greenbelt and you give the permissions we give for the applicant to run a dog business there and it becomes brownfield, surely at that point, unless it's conditioned differently, they can then apply to build something on it, and it'll be a damn sight easier to build on brownfield than it ever will be in Greenbelt, because we wouldn't go for it.
Just in terms of that, Chair, if the issue of it becoming a previously developed site, then the issue that you would then need to assess if there was an application submitted at that point is whether the development then had a greater impact on openness and the purposes including land within it. So it doesn't necessarily then follow that the use goes from an agricultural use to a non-agricultural use, and therefore it becomes a site on which any development can take place, greenfield or brownfield. So I don't believe that follows, Chair.
Sorry, Adrian, but I thought you just said once it would move away from being an agricultural site.
It would lose that agricultural use.
Status.
It would become a dog training, exercising site. So it would no longer have that agricultural use.
And can it revert back to that agricultural use, or does it always then remain as a brownfield site?
There's no planning consent needed for agricultural development, whether that's use of land for agriculture or any associated activity. So it wouldn't need permission to revert back to an agricultural use.
Right, and can it be conditioned that the building never goes on that site? Because I'm starting to worry. I'm all for people getting a business off the ground and getting it to be more viable. I don't know how viable that field needs to be. It's not something I don't believe we explore in the planning committee. But at some point, I'm going to bring it back up. Surely there needs to be some conveniences, some setup for people to use a toilet facility on that site.
Chair, I'm concerned in advising members here that we're getting to a situation where members are seeking to take a view on development that isn't actually proposed. You need to remember and consider what's actually being proposed, not what may happen. You will have control over any subsequent planning application that's submitted for buildings, other facilities on the site. You're being asked to consider on this application the change of use of that site to a dog training exercising area, the provision of an altered access, car parking and turning area, and the construction of the fence. That's what you're being asked to consider. Is it acceptable in planning terms or not? That's the decision you need to make. In terms of future development, I can't advise you what may or may not come forward on the site. There may never be an application to provide any more development on the site. There may be, but you will then need to judge that application on its merits when that's.
Sorry, Adrian, but I asked this of the speakers about of the applicant about public facilities for a public convenience on that site before I asked about brownfield and greenbelt. So surely if there's going to be a facility there for dog training, call it what you may, dog park, for 7, 8, 9, 10 hours a day, probably longer in the summer, there should be some facility there for people to use.
And if that were the case, then planning application would need to be submitted for it and it would need to be judged and assessed on its merit.
Should that not be in this application?
It's not for the local planning authority to what constitutes and should be part of an application. Okay. You're not being asked to consider other things other than what is being proposed. And I emphasise to members that you stick to that consideration, not what you think should or possibly could go on the site. I can't advise you. An application may be submitted for a house.
Yeah, I get all that, Adrian, and I'm also got running around in my head the one that Councillor Clough came up with, and that's for me for STC 12 about protecting amenity of the existing occupiers, i.e. Little Chatsworth, and so on and so forth up and down that field, and the 78 people that are objecting to it.
Thank you. If there's no other questions for the officers, we can move to the debate. So I will open the floor if anyone wants to start. Councillor Liggett.
Well, personally, as an ex-veterinary nurse, I'm going to agree with Roger about the dog fighting. Worries me immensely, especially this 10-minute crossover period, because not everybody is going to have the intelligence to pull in with their car and keep their dog in the car until the last people have put their dog in their car and gone home. They're not. The first thing that you're going to do is get there and open the car. I'm very concerned about that. Also, noise from the mowing. At the moment, it's mown once or twice a year by a tractor for hay. If we're talking, ordinary mowers, possibly every 2 to 3 weeks through the growing season, that's quite a lot more noise than that area's been used to. What else I got? Access. That bothers me from looking at those photographs. When a tractor pulls in and out of that field, a tractor's up there, the driver can see. The car's down here. And I really don't think it looks like you can see very far at all as you're pulling out in a car through that with those hedges. That's my opinions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The noise thing is for me as well. Even the applicant has said that you can get a lot of dogs there and they're going to be trained on recall. You can't tell me. I shout for my dog sometimes when he decides he's going to be a belligerent little thing. And I know there'll be a lot of shouting going on in that field. It's quite simple. And the gentleman who lives across the valley says he can hear the hounds. So I'm sure he's going to be hearing people shouting across the valley as well on a very still day.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a number of concerns in a number of areas. I mean, policy SS10. It says that obviously there's no buildings proposed, but the engineering operations are not inappropriate, providing preserve and openness. It doesn't mean that at all. We're fencing in the area, and effectively we're putting in a sandstone gravel bed footpaths. So we're changing the greenfield completely. Another thing that concerns me again is there seems to be a lack of planning here somewhere along the line. Because we're talking about whips, not developed trees, but then they're saying that we can have developed trees if that's what you want. That wouldn't protect against noise pollution, the whips, environmental pollution from the extra travel, the dog litter, effectively, would create more environmental pollution, and the trees wouldn't be developed trees to absorb all that pollution. There's also, to me, a danger with horses next to this site. Yes, the gate could be left open. There's no guarantee of control. You know, it's going to be on camera. There's not going to be anybody there to control everything. So there's a potential for dogs to get out and this horse next to you. S10 already quoted 6.17 SDC 12. I don't think it meets that either. That really worries me. And that's all I've got at the moment. Thank you.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Chair. It's an interesting one because in principle, I actually don't object to this at all. I find a lot of the objections that we've come in are almost contradicting themselves on a lot of occasions, because the whole idea of this area is that dogs have got free roam in a safe space. And to me, that actually is probably a lot safer than allowing them to roam up and down footpaths and potentially worrying animals anyway. So I think that bit becomes self-regulating. We've got people saying there's no local demand and people won't travel that far, but then they're complaining about potential increases to traffic. And then I'm trying to read my own handwriting on some of these. There was another one, I can't read my own handwriting. I think we probably do, if we do proceed with it, to address one of the key concerns is to put that self-closing gate in as a thing. And I'll apologise if I'm misquoting it because I've written it next to her name, but it may not be her. I think kind of picking up what Councillor Clough's just said, I've got Maureen Greenland who said it needs more thought. And I think that's kind of the thing that's coming across to me. I think in principle, it's not necessarily wrong, but there's too many intangibles here and we're not hearing. It's kind of, well, we can do this, we can do that, but actually that needs to be what's important to us. So I'm not opposed to it, but I would be more inclined to say, bring it back again with some more detail.
Any other comments? No? Okay. So before we proceed any further, I'll ask the clerk to go through how we address motions.
Thank you, Chair. Please bear in mind, members, that a motion must be moved and seconded before a vote is taken. If an amendment to a motion is moved and seconded, then that amendment will be voted on first. If a motion is to be moved which goes against officer's recommendations, then the member who has moved the motion must give the reasons for doing so. The reason for moving a motion against officer recommendations should comprise the relevant planning issues and be supported by evidence as necessary. If a motion to reject officer recommendations falls, or in other words, it is not passed, that doesn't mean that the recommendation is automatically approved. Rather, you will need to take a position in favour of the recommendations or a different course of action. This will need to be approved by the committee through another vote. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Having heard and read everything before us today, I'm now asking the view of the committee on the application. So I'm opening the floor for a motion. Councillor Cooper?
Can I move off on the officer's recommendations, please, Chair?
Can I second that, please?
Thank you. The clerk will now read out what the motion is.
Okay, Chair, the motion is to approve the application in line with officer recommendations. And with, of course, with usual practice, the vote will be taken by roll call.
Councillor Hancock?
Chair, would the mover and seconder be prepared to accept an amendment in regard to that self-closing gate?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
So approve officer recommendations with the additional condition that a self-closing gate be installed. The essence of it. Anything which you wish to add, Adrian?
No, that's clear, Chair, along with the introduction where I discussed protective conditions 7, 8 and 11, I think it was. 7, 9 and 10, apologies.
Councillor Armitage. Councillor Clough.
Against.
Councillor Cooper. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Hall.
Against.
Councillor Hancock. For. Councillor Lacey. Councillor Liggett.
Against.
Councillor Jones.
Against.
Councillor Powell. Councillor Rouse.
For.
And Councillor Rough.
Against.
That's 4 for the motion and 8 against. The motion has fallen, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. You are now released. You can go home and have a cup of tea.
Chair, it's not yet determined. The motion has fallen, so the issue is now, is there a further motion? Motion's fallen.
Oh, sorry, I do beg your pardon. I was thinking of a cup of tea. The motion was fallen. Have I got a second motion in? I propose that we go against officers' recommendations. Councillor Liggett, are you happy to second that?
you.
Thank you.
Just good, Chair, before you take the vote, it would be helpful to have some clarity on the specific reasons for refusal, Chair, what you'd like, including on any decision. And if it's appropriate and the motions followed, then I suggest that the final wording of that condition of those reasons would be in association, consultation with yourself and the Vice Chair.
Yeah, that's fine.
So just the headlines at this point, Chair, would be appropriate.
To me, it's noise pollution and concern of welfare. Councillor Clough?
I think also SDC 12, it talks about high quality design. I don't think there's been thorough input into this. It's not high quality design at all. I don't think we meet that. Also, SS10. The fence is inside the boundary and it's sandstone parking area rather than grasscrete that's been talked about. I don't think that keeps it as green area. It really changes the area. Thank you, Chair.
I suppose the leader is too, that it's inappropriate for the green belt.
Chair, just in terms of what Councillor Clough and yourself have said, I suggest that those issues are the ones that included. It doesn't preserve the openness of the green belt by reason of the structures and the hard surfacing that's proposed and the comings and goings associated with them.
So the motion then, Chair, is essentially to reject officer recommendations. The issue about noise pollution was raised as a concern, And then also in terms of the proposals do not preserve the openness of the green belt. Is that the essence of it, members? Hey, Chair, I'll now carry out the roll call. Councillor Armitage. Councillor Clough. Councillor Cooper. Councillor Elliott. Councillor Hall.
4.
Councillor Hancock. Councillor Lacey.
4.
Councillor Liggett.
4.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Powell. Councillor Rouse.
Against.
And Councillor Rough. It's 9 for the motion and 3 against. The motion has passed, Chair.
Thank you. Now you can all go home for a cup of tea. Aren't you lucky? To the members, we're going to have a short break. Mr. Varley, you've been exceptionally patient, so thank you very much. We will be with you as shortly as we can. 23. Yeah, the late reps are in the late reps document that's in the pack. This application is for a 4-metre high fence designed to mitigate noise from air source heat pumps, which were installed at Eckington Swimming Pool in 2021. The air source heat pumps do not form part of this application. The application site is located within the centre of Eckington, and the site is outlined here in orange. This is the red line plan. And this is the site located, sorry, this is the location with the Eckington Conservation Area shown in hatched yellow. The boundary of the conservation area at this point is a close boarded fence. The application is for a 4-metre high acoustic fence designed to reduce noise from the air source heat pumps, which heat the site. The fence will be located on the southeastern corner of the building. The fence will be 4 metres in height and constructed of anthracite grey metal cladding and will replace an existing smaller timber close boarded fence. It is possible that glimpses of the fence will be visible from the conservation area, but due to its location, officers are of the view that the fence will be read as part of the existing utilitarian swimming pool building and will therefore be appropriate for the character of the area and will not have a greater impact on the views from the conservation area than the existing building. The fence will be approximately 5 metres from the boundary with the neighbour at 1 Gosper Street, which is located to the east beyond the car park access road. As such, it may be visible from the garden. However, officers are of the view that due to the orientation to the west of the garden and the height and location of the existing swimming pool building, the fence will not have a more harmful impact on light to windows or overshadowing than the existing situation. Following are a selection of photos from yesterday's site visit. This is taken from the south and shows the existing fence. And you can also see the close boarded fence boundary with 1 Gosper Street. This is a view from Gosper Street. Again, you can see the fence, which is the boundary with 1 Gosper Street and the boundary with the conservation area. This shows the site in relation to 1 Gosper Street, which is the building in the middle there. And this is the view from the west on Gosper Street, looking towards the conservation area. It is considered that for the most part, the fence will be obscured by the existing pool building. It is considered that by virtue of its location, the design of the fence meets the requirements of policy SS7 and SDC 12. It also meets requirements of policy SDC 5 by not having a harmful impact on the adjoining conservation area. As a consequence, officers are of the view the application should be approved. Adding weight to the above conclusion is the opinion of the environmental health team that the fence is appropriate mitigation against the noise in these circumstances. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I believe we've got one speaker for this application, and that's Paul Vardy. Thank you for your patience. Yes, thank you.
No, thank you for allowing me to come on today.
You have 3 minutes when you're ready.
My name is Paul Vardy, owner of property of 1 Gosbury Road, and have been a resident since December 2011. The property was selected due to the amenities it offered and the possible development against my daughter obtaining a brain injury due to a road traffic accident in 2010. The noise from the leisure centre was no more than road noise, and at night nothing noticeable due to the leisure centre's hours at work. A gas-fired boiler can be heard, however, this is non-environmental noise impact to me, and neither is the air unit, which was installed in 2018. I draw your attention to this planning application because on the 24th of January, I submitted an application requesting the noise impact survey, which was further into the beginning of the project. The noise impact survey done an assumption and led to this noise survey carried out again. The noise survey, which was received and put onto the planning application, indicates background level noise on 3 occasions. One assessment taken on the 8th of October 2021 where the air source heat pumps was not there, and 2 occasions on 26th of July 2022 and the 31st of October 22. These noise surveys was taken with ambient and not when the air source heat pumps was running. When the air source heat pumps was running, the indicated noise levels within the compound was raising up to 74 decibels with a noise impact at my property of 60 decibels. Hence the fact that noise impact study mentioning that this needs to be resolved. I questioned this noise survey because the first noise survey, which was undertaken on the 19th of January, led to assumption, which has led to the council then re-looking at this situation and submitting plan application to amend their original design. I believe the original design was not submitted with plan application because it was led to deceive me in the first inset due to the air source heat pumps not allowing planning application in the offset. On the 6th of May, I received another application, or shall I say, freedom of information in relation to noise survey, and it indicated that there was significant adverse effects from the air source heat pumps, which affected my property. I do not believe that the account of the new survey takes into account everything that can give you a reasonable and fitting solution to the air source heat pumps. The background noise before the installation was 50 decibels. I want 50 decibels back at my property, and I don't believe this acoustic will reduce the noise lower than 50 decibels as it is present without the air source heat pumps on. I'm in question of Clark and Saunders carrying out this survey due to the fact that the first initial survey, again, was done on assumption, and the latter survey was not conclusive, and the full information has not been submitted.
That's time.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? No? Thank you very much, Mr. Vaughn. Are there any questions for the officers? Councillor Elliott?
Yes, Chair, I've just got one, and it's to whoever's decided we're putting up 4-metre high acoustic barrier. Do you believe that will stop the airborne travel over the top of it, of noise?
The fence has been designed to alleviate the noise from the heat pumps. Our environmental health officers have confirmed that they believe that it will work. So that's the advice that we've been given from them.
And what happens if not? Because as far as I can see, yes, it will absorb some sound. It's bound to. It's an absorptive material. But surely it'll go over 4 metre. It doesn't just go, I'm going to stop making a noise when wind blows.
Get it right. If it's still causing a noise nuisance, then the noise would be dealt with under environmental health legislation. But they are confident that this will work, but if it doesn't, then they will have to go back and enforce against it that way, as I understand it.
Thanks, Alice.
Councillor Cooper?
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to what Mr. Vardy said, Alice, does this meet his criteria? Does it meet and does it address the problems that he is facing? I know Mr. Vardy said quite a little bit there in 3 minutes. I'm just trying to take all that in, but for his own good and his family's good, does this do the job, and does it do it well enough to satisfy neighbours?
I've been told by our environmental health officers that it will meet the requirements of legislation.
Just if I can add on to that, Chair, that Alice and I are following the advice of environmental health officers, the noise experts, and we are not noise experts, I'm afraid. So we are following the advice of the environmental health officers, and Alice is absolutely correct that the advice is that this will do the job to address the noise issues that Mr. Vardy and others may be experiencing. But beyond that, we're not in a position to go beyond what the environmental health officers have told us, I'm afraid. It's a very specialist subject, as members will know. So we're following their advice, and we've written the report entirely in accordance with that.
Are there any further questions? No, thank you. And I'll ask the clerk to go through where we go for. Or do we want a debate first?
Actually, the point now would usually be a debate, Chair, and then
I'm looking at the blank faces. Shall we move to the motion?
if no debate, then motion. So it's a matter for members.
Councillor Hall?
I propose that we go with officer's recommendation.
Thank you.
So the motion is, Chair, to approve officer recommendations. Councillor Armitage? Councillor Clough? Councillor Cooper? Councillor Elliott? Councillor Hall? Or Councillor Hancock? Or Councillor Lacey? Councillor Liggett? Councillor Jones? Councillor Powell? Councillor Rouse?
For.
And Councillor Ruff. That's unanimous, Chair. The motion has passed.
Thank you all very much. That was nice and quick and sweet. Right, moving on to the next part of our agenda, whenever I can find my sheet.
Chair, just to advise you that David Cunningham, the council's tree officer, will take you through the next report. And David, no members have met him. David is just behind me, so I'll vacate the seat and David will take my place.
So we're on item 6, which is the tree preservation order, TPO 192/2022 at Wingerworth. Over to you, David.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Committee. This is for the confirmation of Tree Preservation Order 292, which protects a mature beech tree in the Rectory Gardens at All Saints Church, Wingerworth. Before deciding the order, we have to take account of any duly made objections and representations. 2 objections have been received, and it's the officer's recommendation that we confirm the preservation order without modification.
Thank you. You've all got notes in front of you, and I'd go to page 40. I'm just trying to see this without my glasses. 46 and 2.8, where it says the residents have raised concerns because of damage to their wall at some point. This, in fact, wasn't the beech tree. It's a totally different tree. It was a yew tree, which is at the top of the drive. The beech tree is situated further down the drive. That's a lovely picture of the beech tree in the distance. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that what is quoted there is not the tree that we're talking about. Thank you. Are there any questions for the officers? A lot of page turning going on. Do we want to have a debate, or do we want just to move straight to a motion? I'd move to the motion that we keep the tree. All in favour?
So is that to confirm office recommendations and
It is.
confirm the order?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Thank you all very much.
And that was a unanimous vote by acclamation. Thank you, Chair.
Moving on to number 8, planning appeals. Over to you, Adrian.
Chairs, as customary, we've set out there all the appeals lodged in the past 4 weeks approximately. You can see there's been a number lodged with us. They'll be determined in due course. The only appeal dismissed is the application for the certificate of lawful use at Robincroft Farm. And I always say this to members, but it was a very interesting appeal decision to take into account in respect of certificates of lawful use. And again, I always say this, I recommend reading it to members in a spare 10 minutes that you've got. It well set out and well written and of use to you in your decision making going forwards. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding these? Wonderful. Item 9, I have no matters of urgency, but item 10, exclusion of the public. I move that the public be excluded from the meeting during the discussion of the following item on the business to avoid the disclosure to them of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3 part of Schedule 12A Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government Access to Information Variation Order 2008. If we're all happy with that, let's move to item 11.
Excuse me, Chair, can we just get confirmation that the feed is ended?